about 5 pages.
That's great.
Amazing. We are live, so
Yay.
woo.
Fan.
I'm gonna post that on Instagram.
Which side do we flip on?
Apologies for the delay, everyone. Traffic be like that.
Goddamn traffic. I have notifications on for the YouTube channel, so everything I own just went ping! Constellation Children are live with Murder Mondays.
Really?
Oh, really? I hadn't noticed.
Who's getting off? What?
Someone's getting it.
Apologies for my father. All right. So do you want to do our main attraction first or start with our little stories?
Whatever's fine with me. I've just learned some more interesting things about both the people we're talking about, or I'm talking about. So.
Okay.
Should we introduce the podcast?
Yes. So this is Murder Mondays. Hello, episode 1. I am Rose, and my co-host here is the wonderful Shelby. Our guest today is Millie. Everyone, welcome Millie.
All the way from the UK, she definitely flew here.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I'm actually in Rose's basement right now because social distancing.
She's not allowed to get out. The government might find her.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, would you like to start off then, Millie, with your tale of murder today?
My tale of murder.
Yes.
Wonderful. I feel like I've bigged this up to, well, I haven't bigged it up at all. Also, I had the literal photo of the story right there, and now it has vanished. So I'm just gonna find it. It'll take about 2 seconds, but this is really inconvenient.
All right, since everyone is new here, I'm going to explain this real quick. So we have one main murder story that we're all going to cover together. This episode is H.H. Holmes, excuse me. And then we all brought our own little murder story that we didn't tell each other what it was.
I found it. Okay. This... I don't know how good this is gonna be. I read it, and it's actually kind of creepy. But
Perfect.
It's Murder Mondays. I mean,
it's Murder Mondays. I'm looking at the screenshot I took. I found this at 1 a.m. and it's like one of the first things that comes up when you Google creepy real life murder story. Anyway, it's called the Icebox Murders. In 1965, Fred and Edwina Rogers were living in Houston along with their grown son, Charles. Okay, instantly. When a grown man is still living with their parents in a murder mystery story, something's gonna go wrong. The family mostly kept to themselves in their quiet neighborhood, especially given Charles's reclusive and antisocial behavior. In fact, many neighbors were not even aware that Charles lived at home with his parents because he left the house each day before dawn and didn't return until well after nightfall. Wow, this guy.
That's not suspicious at all.
definitely not shady.
Nope.
When a family member hadn't heard from the Rogers in several days, he called the Houston police for a welfare check on his elderly aunt and uncle. The patrolmen were unable to locate Fred and Edwina, but they noticed food sitting on the dining room table. They opened the fridge and noticed numerous packets of meat neatly stacked on top of one another. They also noticed 2 human heads in the vegetable bin.
Vegetable bin is the
Additional officers arrived on the stomach-turning scene and slowly removed the packages full of dismembered body parts from the fridge. The remains were that of Fred and Edwina Rogers. The police deduced that Edwin had been brutally beaten and shot while Fred suffered forceful trauma to his head. His eyes had been gouged out and his genitalia removed. The couple's innards had been flushed down the toilet. Charles...
The toilet? It
was-
didn't clog the toilet?
Well, I mean...
Imagine getting that backflow.
I assume it did clog the toilet, otherwise they probably wouldn't have been able to find the innards.
What about the sewers? Did they have to have someone go into the sewers to like fetch the guts?
It's
Yeah,
just some guy a la Pennywise, just like lurking, like, you know, just pokes his head out of the sewers to some child. Hey, Georgie, you want some guts?
Yeah, Charles vanished. Their son suspectedly, he was never found, that he suspectedly murdered his parents, dismembered them, did all of that gruesome stuff, and then I think he was going to eat their body parts.
Balanced diet.
Why would he keep the heads though? That's my question.
He didn't keep the heads, he threw them in the vegetable bin.
Well,
He was getting rid of the heads in the weekly disposal.
oh, the English.
Oh, right, yeah. He would have put it in one of those, we've got big compost bins.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They get taken out.
No, I thought you
so
meant
friendly.
like the vegetable section in the fridge, and I was like, why?
Oh, no. He did not put them in there. He put them in a big brown or green or blue bin, depending on where in this country you live. Because we
Actually,
can't
that makes
just
even
have
less
them everywhere.
sense. Because they would start to smell like immediately.
Well, what was the weather like at the time, so on and so forth, humidity levels. It all depends. Plus,
That's true.
I mean,
even
smell
in
of cooking meat.
1965, there probably wasn't even weekly bin collections then. I don't know. What's time?
All right. That was very interesting. So is he still not caught then?
No. He's probably dead now, since he was a grown man in 1960. But yeah, he ran away.
Fun times. Would you like to go next, Shelby, or should I?
Whichever you want to do, whatever you're feeling.
Okay, I would like to do a content warning. Not only is there murder, violence, and blood as usual here, this is child murder. Apologies. So I'd like to put up a quick visual for you. There is no blood in this visual.
Oh,
I promise. What are you awing about? I just got started. You want some bloody visuals? You can get to that later.
Shelby's
Blood.
just here for the blood.
Let's see.
it's the one thing I haven't gotten to hold.
I should have brought my fake blood up here. Maybe
Blood
next
is
week.
liquid, it would be pretty hard to hold.
I mean, I've already told you guys the list of organs I've got told. Disclaimer, I did a neuroscience camp at a medical school. All the organ holding was legal. But because it was, like, you know, preserved, there was no blood.
All of
It's
it.
a little sad.
All right. I'm going to screen share real quick. I found the image I wanted. So this is an 8-year-old child. Normal, healthy, happy child.
No.
Her name is Maddie Clifton. She has an 11-year-old sister named Jessie, who's 11 years old. And on November 3rd, 1998, she went missing. She was going out to play, and she never came back. There was a search party of over 1,000 people. There were over 10 billboards with her face on them, and they made T-shirts. Her parents went on TV, and they were just pleading for people to come back. For anyone who knew anything, they offered a $50,000 reward and they said there was a chance of doubling it. They were desperate. Even the U.S. Army Reserve came in. So I'm sure the question is, what happened? Well, she was playing with... My sister has just handed me my fake blood. I'm gonna go get that.
When the fake blood is required, someone will always deliver.
Fake blood, real blood.
Shall we
Who
please
knows?
don't provide real blood?
I didn't know where to get that.
Where did it go? Sure. There we go. Blood. It works. And there's blood all over my notes now.
We're about to get reported by YouTube. They're going to censor gore.
Oh yeah, this is.
It's going to go against community guidelines.
I'm sorry. Okay,
This
too late now.
It doesn't even look like blood. Anyway. My cat thinks I'm dead. He's looking at me weird. But she went out to play, and she was playing with a 45-year-old man, which already sets off some alarm bells.
Why is it always men, man? It's always guys. It's always men in their 40s.
He had a criminal record, like a long criminal record. Mostly it was like DUIs and stuff like that. But there were also 2 sexual assault charges 5 years apart. And so I don't know why she was playing with this man, but she was. They were just hitting golf balls. They were, however, in an area where everyone could see them. They were in public, and there were witnesses who were like, yeah, no, we saw them. It was fine. And she went to go get more golf balls, and she just never came back. So the guy just assumed, hey, stuff happens. Her mom probably called her in for dinner. Whatever, not a big deal. What actually happened was much different. Oh, and the 45-year-old, he did fail a polygraph test, but
polygraph tests are known for being incredibly infallible and are not allowed to be legally admitted in court as evidence.
And he had a pretty strong alibi, and he willingly gave them DNA. So the police were still on his case, and he made over 20 statements. But at this point, they're thinking, okay, we got to do something else. This isn't working out. So at this point, it has been a week. It is November 10th, 1998, in the morning, and Maddie's parents are doing a segment on Good Morning America, just, again, begging anyone who knows where she is or anything, just tell us, please. We need to know what happened to her. And as they're wrapping up the segment, she was found. So we're going to switch perspectives a little bit. There is a woman getting ready for work. Her name is Missy Phillips. And she has a couple hours, but she's up now. And she's like, you know what? I am sick and tired of telling my son to clean his room because it's starting to smell.
Oh no!
I can see your face right now.
Oh no!
It's starting to smell. He has 3 birds up there, so she assumed that was the smell. That he just stopped feeding. He just stopped feeding the bird or cleaning up their cages, and it was just bird shit everywhere. But she was like, you know what?
Shit and bodies do not smell the same, ma'am.
Maybe she didn't know that. Anyway, so she was like, I am sick and tired of this. I am going to go up there and throw out some of the things that I know are trash. So she's got her garbage bag. She's got everything. She's running up in there. And she noticed a little, a damp spot he had a waterbed near the corner of the waterbed. And she's like, oh shit, the waterbed's leaking. Great.
Oh no.
The waterbed's leaking.
It's not the waterbed.
And so she's like, maybe that's the smell. It's like some mold or some mildew from the waterbed. And she found it. She got like a sock. She saw like a sock poking out. She's like, how did he get a sock like in the waterbed? So she tried to pull it out and it was stuck. And she was like, that's weird. Then she noticed there was electrical tape just around this whole corner of the waterbed. She was like, oh, it must have been leaking for a while and Josh didn't want to get in trouble. And so she undid the electrical tape. It was too dark to see anything, so she went and got a flashlight. She went to pull the sock again, and she was trying to pull it off, and she felt something beneath the sock, and she felt toes. She felt cold. She said it was very cold toes, and she shined the flashlight in to see what it was because she didn't know. And she knew immediately that it was the missing girl, even though it had been a week. So I imagine she was very badly decomposed inside the waterbed.
Oh God, the smell.
Wait,
Could you
hold
imagine
on.
the smell?
Was he sleeping on top of the...
He had been sleeping on top of the waterbed for the entire week.
No.
No,
No.
Yes.
There's creepy, and then there's just
No.
sweet dreams.
Cadaver. It gets worse. So she immediately went out and she immediately called her husband, like, you have to get home right now. This is an
Forget
emergency.
your husband. Call the cops. Who gives a shit about your son?
The husband didn't answer. And so she runs out because there are police on duty there. It's like, she's like crying and screaming. She's like, oh my God, oh my God. So Officer Donald F. Tutton, he comes out like, can I help you? Like, what is happening? You're screaming and you don't look okay. And she can't even say what's up there.
She doesn't
like,
look okay.
I need you to go in my house. I need you to go in my house. And he's like, okay. So he calls for backup. He calls 2 other officers and she leads them up to her son's room. And she can't even go in there. She just points at where they need to go. And they say immediately they smelled the death and decay. So they know what it smells like. Apparently she didn't. This is about 7:30 a.m. by now. And
It's 7 a.m.?
It's 7:30 a.m. at this point. Yep.
That's too fucking early.
It really is. And so they look in, they're like, oh, this is definitely the body of the missing kid. You need to tell us how you found this. And so she tells them everything. They're like, okay, where is your son? It's like, well, he's on the school bus heading towards school right now.
Wait, no. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How old is this kid?
I was about to say that. He's 14.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
No. Oh.
He's 14.
No. We don't like that.
So they're like, okay. They run over and get him. And so at this point, the husband is coming home because he got the message and it's just, you need to come home and it's an emergency. And they're like police cars all over his house and he's not allowed in. He's like, what happened? And then at this point, they decide, okay, we need to tell the Cliftons. So they go across the street where they were the entire time. And they're like, we found Maddie. Her dad's first question was, where did you find her? Across the street. They've been looking for a whole week, and she's been across the street in their neighbor's waterbed this whole time. So they're freaking out, obviously. So what happened, she was going to get some more golf balls, and Josh was like Josh, that's the kid, saw her. Oh. He saw his chance and he took it. His story is that they were playing baseball. She got hit on the head by something and he panicked, took her upstairs, and then she was screaming, so he stabbed her to keep her quiet, because that makes sense. That's not what happened.
Tiny little flaw in the logic there.
Yeah. So what actually happened, as best as we can elaborate. So we went up there and apologies.
We were
Yes,
the
I was
cops.
definitely there.
Where's
We were the three cops. Millie's
Oh.
real name is Donald F. Tutton. You know.
You discovered my
Just all of like Owen Carver, just
legit. I was born to be Owen Carver.
So we went, well, that might be one of our next readings. So they went up there. So he went over and he's like, oh, I have some more golf balls. You're looking for some more golf balls? And they were playing, and the police aren't quite sure exactly how she got hit, but she definitely got hit, and they don't think it's an accident. She was then dragged up the stairs, and trigger warning, possibly sexual abuse. So her
oh no.
I'm sorry. Her pants were found off and her underwear were like half off, and he's like, well, that's because I dragged her up the stairs. And they were like,
That's
but
not how clothes work.
no, that's not how it works. That's just not how it works. And so they think he did something, and at this point they're in his room and she's screaming because big scary man just knocked her out and then dragged her up to his room. Obviously she's screaming, and he's like, be quiet. And he stabs her just over and over and over again, just to get her quiet. And so there's blood everywhere. By the way, when the police came in, there was still blood on the fan. He didn't even clean it up properly.
So crime of opportunity, certainly.
Yes, stabs her over and over again, and is like, oh, there's a body here, and I don't want to get in trouble for there being a body here, so I'm just gonna hide it underneath my waterbed. And during the week, he just kept, when they found it, there were air fresheners everywhere. There were like dozens, and of course it did nothing because there was a body rotting in there. And so he definitely gets, so everyone is shocked because they were neighbors. They played with each other.
Aren't they always shocked?
This is true. He gets sentenced to life, quite obviously. But there's more.
There's why is there always more? Free steak knife?
So he was tried as an adult, even though he was 14, because of all the shit he did. He deserved it. In June of 2017, he went through resentencing because there was a Supreme Court decision because he was a juvenile when he was sentenced and whatever. And this time, you remember Jessie, the older sister? She was 11 at the time. But at this point in 2017, she's older, and her parents tried to protect her as best they could from the court trial, so she didn't know much. But she said she felt an obligation, so she went to these court trials, and she found he didn't really care about Maddie. He was obsessed with her. He had a picture of her above his bed, and he stole some of her clothes at one point, and there are all these things. And so the parents were a bit concerned at something he did, and so they were like, no.
A bit?
So they were like, we don't really want you hanging around him anymore. But I mean, Maddie was 8. She was on her own, and this kid that she knows just walked up and was like, hey, you want to play some, baseball? I mean,
I don't think I was that dumb.
Yeah, let's play some baseball.
She was
guys.
8, okay? Anyway, I
guess also the 90s.
Yeah, that's true. And so they went over, and she had to sit there listening to all of this and how he was obsessed with her. And so because their parents were trying to keep him away from the kids a little bit, he was like, okay, I'm not gonna get a chance to get to Jessie. So when he saw his chance to get to Maddie, he just took it. He was his second best option. And can you imagine just
The guilt.
sitting there, just knowing like, oh, that could have been me. That would have been me.
The could-haves and the would-haves, but also knowing that because of his obsession with you might have been linked to what happened to your sister. I couldn't imagine like the sheer amount of guilt and grief one would have to go through after dealing with that. Fuck this kid. I don't care if he was 14. He was clearly old enough to do this shit.
Yeah, so he was immediately resentenced to life in that hearing because they were like, no, we don't care if you were 14. No, thank you. This is not okay.
Please tell me that like it wasn't just like, the whole concept of, the concept of prison is meant to like reform people, but we all know that's not what it's really about. But like, please tell me he went to like a mental place instead. Like, please tell me he was looked over, studied, kept an eye on, instead of just being put with the general populace.
He did not go to a psych hospital or a psych ward. A psychologist who evaluated Phillips in the 2017 court case said he expressed remorse and he'd been rehabilitated in prison. But I mean, how much can we really trust that is my question. If he took an 8-year-old and beat and stabbed her to death and then slept on top of her. Because this was, as you said, this was clearly a crime of opportunity. But then he continued to sleep on her dead body for a whole week while he was participating in the searches, by the way. He was one of the people participating in the searches.
Oh, that's
Come on!
Tricky.
Imagine if you're like the parents and like there's this little boy coming around helping you, and you're so thankful that like the neighbors are banding together. Like there's a sense of community as you try to find like, one of the most important people in your life. And then you realize this little snot rag has been under your nose after stealing one of the most precious things in your life and has been pretending to help you like Jesus Christ on a crutch.
Yes. So he is still in prison now, obviously, because 2017 was only 3 years ago. But he's still alive. I believe he is in the general populace.
I'll be careful
not
fire
in a
him.
Psych ward. Yeah.
They don't like pedophiles.
No, they don't. They don't take kindly to that. So hopefully, okay, look, I wouldn't normally encourage violence, but hopefully someone beats him to death in there.
Maybe not beats him to death, but like,
roughs him up a little bit.
Little rough up.
Yeah. I feel like he deserves it.
He needs to drop his soap.
Yep.
Oh, Lord.
It was really interesting, actually. I'd like to rep another podcast real quick. One of my main sources was Morbid, a true crime podcast, and the sister, Jessica, actually called in to the podcast, and I didn't want to take anything away from what she said, but if you want more information, I would go look at that because she called in to clear up a few things.
I literally just had to make a note of that.
And I can't imagine doing that, but...
Dear God. All right, well, we're going to be taking a bit of a turn back a few centuries, just a couple, about 400, to be exact, 400 years, to the area that's currently modernly known as Hungary. So, for a preface on the way that area worked, most of you guys should know Hungary is in Europe. I pray to God you guys know. Please tell me.
I didn't take geography.
Oh Lord. And so Hungary was split into two separate areas. You had what was known as the Ottoman Empire, aka the Turks. And then you had was essentially an aristocracy, just a group of different nobles ruling the areas. And then in between, you have the normal populace, which were serfs. Which, to explain what serfs were, essentially, they were peasants who lived on the land. Their lives were attached to land. They grew up, they lived, they died there. And essentially, you could do whatever they want to them. They were essentially treated as indentured servants, or at times as well as slaves. Not a very good life. And there was a countess. Her name was Elizabeth Bathory. You might know her possibly as the Blood Countess. Supposedly, she owns the Guinness World Record for the most murders by a female killer. Elizabeth Bathory grew up in, this what would in the future become Hungary. She already was from noble blood, and then she married a famous count. She has famous family, including, let's see, one of her cousins was the Prince of Transylvania. An uncle, no wait, it was her nephew was the Prince of Transylvania. Her uncle was the King of Poland. So you can imagine, very, very noble, very wealthy, very powerful. In 1610, she was accused of so many murders. Like, there's you have like Jack the Ripper, who like people don't realize is only like 5 or 6. Then you have this woman who was accused of 600. So you can imagine, a lot seemed to be stacked up against her. There was an eyewitness testimony. 4 of her servants supposedly spoke out against her. She was said to be torturing young women, including taking in young minor nobles to supposedly educate them, where she would also torture them, including her own servants. There was also a rumor that went about that she would bathe in their blood in order to keep herself youthful and beautiful. Now, none of this bathing in blood has any sort of actual historical founding. There is one eyewitness by, let's see, what was his name? I apologize. Names are difficult. Let's see. God, what are the names? Count Georgi Thurzo. We're just going to go with Thurzo. Count Thurzo was hearing strange reports coming from the castle, that young women kept going missing and so on and so forth, that there were screams heard. And so, like, a logical ruler, he went and investigated. Upon there, he found one woman dead and another one dying, supposedly witnessing himself torture that was happening. Now, as time goes on, more and more, happens until a more notable noble woman goes missing, and so nobody can ignore it anymore. And thus, there's a search held on the castle, and she is seized. And they find tools which are assumed to be implemented for this torture. Horrible things like drawing, quartering, lashing, being branded. She was supposedly known for beating and branding these women. And so a court case was held. Court, of course, at the time of hearing. There were 4 of her servants who testified against her, as well as various family members. And thus she was sentenced to life in her castle all alone. Now, here's where the interesting thing comes into play. Every single person who testified against her had something to gain. Every single one, except for these 4 servants. The thing was, these servants were tortured into a confession. You see, if it's the bigger guy doing it, then surely it's fine, And so, they supposedly testified against her. Every single one who spoke out ended up receiving things such as parts of her land, her wealth, and with her out of power, Count Thurzo also eliminated competition. Because at the time, she was the most wealthy woman alive, incredibly powerful. After her husband passed, which, by the way, she got engaged to this man when she was 10, married when she was 15. Interesting. A little questionable. Everybody got something about it. And the most interesting part is she never testified. She never was allowed to testify. People spoke against her, and she just got shipped off to live the rest of her days out. And it's the fact that there's so little actual evidence that, with the sheer gaps in information, rumors spread. She is thought to be the female Dracula. Someone so vile and disgusting. Some say that her crimes had a sexual purpose, so on and so forth. There's one history book that I happen to own that quote unquote claims that she might have been bisexual. I think that's a little bit of a yikes in my opinion, you know? Seems a little bit more of a drag on the queer community than it is on her. Questions. There's like no backing for this, mind you. So what's interesting as well as there is a archivist in the Hungary National Archives, and he has access to all the testimonies as well as the tools that were supposedly found in this castle. And he believes that she was completely innocent. This brings up what was found there, including a style of heating rod. So when you look at this, you assume, oh, torture, horrible, like, you know, you're branding these women, you're listening to their screams, like, you're disgusting. Until he brings up the fact that those are very primitive medical tools. This iron was used to cauterize wounds. And more comes out. You know, these women show up to possibly get healed. This was a place of healing, not necessarily murder. Of course, when you find someone dead, perhaps, you know, she wasn't able to save them. But you never get to hear about it in this because all that was, you know, spoken about was to denounce her, to be able to gain her wealth. So the rumor now goes on, was Countess Elizabeth Bathory a gruesome killer, or was she a woman taken advantage of by circumstance and a cutthroat attempt to be able to gain power over her? She died when she was about 44, you know, never being able to get to see freedom again.
That's really dark.
I have heard of her, and I would like, if you're fine with it, I would like to read a list of some of the rumors that don't have any historical backing. Trigger warning, all the trigger warnings. So no kids, I think. Actually, some of them were like 10. So yes, all of them.
Yes, I'd say that's children. Yeah.
Yeah, all of them.
10 is children.
10 to 14, yeah. So some of the things she was rumored to do is keep her servants chained up every night so tight their hands turned blue and they spurted blood, beat them to the point where there's so much blood on the walls that they had to use ashes and cinders to soak it up, strangled a servant to death with the silk scarf, burned her servants with metal sticks, like you said, stuck burning iron rods on their feet, stabbed them, pricked them in their mouths and fingers with needles, cut their hands, lips, and noses with scissors, stitched their lips and tongues together, made servants sit on stinging nettles, then bathe with said stinging nettles, had them stand in tubs of ice water up to their necks outside until they died, smeared a naked girl with honey and left her outside to be bitten by ants, wasps, bees, and flies. And this one I've heard that her husband taught her, kept them from eating for a week at a time, forced them to cook and eat their own flesh, heated up a cake to red hot temperatures and made a servant eat it, stuffed 5 servants' corpses underneath a bed and continued to feed them as if they were still alive. And then after she was dead, more details were added, including the bathing in blood. And basically all of these are just homophobic or misogynistic.
Yeah. The beginning of the blood rumor was founded on supposedly, again, everything must be taken with a grain of salt, especially since this was so long ago, you know, just rumors able to build up and build up. Supposedly, she had backhanded a servant girl, and her ring had cut her, and she had tasted the blood, and through that sparked her fantasy with it.
Yep. Yeah, and so everything that was added after trying to be like, oh, you see, she was crazy, is just adding like, oh, she's crazy because she was menopausal or she was bisexual or like, no. She's like, she had syphilis, she had epilepsy. First of all, there's no backing for that. Second, so what? that doesn't mean anything.
Well, she is believed to have passed from syphilis, which was fairly common enough at the time. King Henry VIII passed from syphilis of the brain. I say he deserved it.
Yeah.
Piece of shit. Which is interesting. Then, how did she get that syphilis? Which is another question to raise, because it's not like airborne; it's STI, as hopefully most of you guys know from your health classes. And she had already had her husband pass, so you gotta raise some questions there too.
That list of stuff she's supposedly done.
So this was either the most horrible set of murders in history,
or the one of the most incredible setups.
Yeah.
Yes. Jesus.
I think we're ready to get on to our main event now.
Yes.
Yes. Would you like to start us off then, Shelby?
I would be very much willing. So, I'm assuming a lot of people have heard of the famous H.H. Holmes, quote-unquote America's first serial killer. His main string of killings went throughout the Chicago World's Fair, which was brought in so many people, as much as was, I believe, about 700,000 a day. So you can imagine the constant influx, as well as many young women were finally going off on their own into the city and to get their own jobs, not necessarily contacting family. H.H. Holmes, aka, let's see, Herman Mudgett. That's his actual name. He's used multiple aliases. Aliases? What's the word?
Aliases.
Yep, that's the word. H.H. Holmes being the one that stuck the most, but his actual name is Herman Mudgett. He was born in May 16th, 1861, in a small town up in the Northeast. And there's a lot of rumor and mystery about, how he was as a child. One thing that everybody agrees on, he tortured animals, which is a hallmark known amongst many serial killers. There is a rumor that has now been disfounded that when he was young, a bunch of bullies took him into a doctor's office and forced him to touch a real human skeleton, including that they put the hands of it on his face. Supposedly, this sparked a fascination. At first he was frightened, but then he was intrigued. This has no historical founding. There are two main murders, but a couple others that do have some founding that raise a lot of questions. Two of his cousins, when he was young, around the age of 14, went missing. Two other Mudgetts. Both were found drowned nearby, as well as several other children in the village had gone missing. None of their causes of death written down. So that starts raising some question marks when he's very young, an early teenagers to early adult. While he was not a very good student, he was known for being incredibly brilliant and a very charming man. He graduated high school at age 16 before going off to a college and then eventually teaching at a school. There were a lot of, questions about him teaching because they thought someone more experienced should have been brought there. But he was very self-assured and knew that he was better than them. After that, he left and went to the, the University of Vermont. But he ended up leaving that as well. He was studying medical there, but supposedly he was never able to work with cadavers, which left him dissatisfied. And so after that, he went to the Michigan Department of Medicine and Surgery in 1882 to graduate 2 years later. There are a lot of rumors surrounding this as well. Supposedly, he would take bodies and mutilate them and then cash them in for insurance money. This whole con that would eventually grow tremendously once he made his way into Chicago. And, as a doctor, when he's selling, he would also take the organs from the med school, or when he would grave rob, he could sell them off to other med schools and nobody would question it. He was married to back in the village, he was married to a woman named Clara A. Lovering, and they had a son together. She would follow him to Chicago, but they lived in a boarding house at first, and there's rumors with his roommates that she was being abused, that she'd come out with bruises, and eventually she got sick and left him. Mind you, they hadn't divorced. So keep marriage one in mind when we talk about the others. So
Others, plural.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
He's in Chicago and he starts working for the Holmes pharmacy. Under this, he takes the name H.H.Holmes, his most famous moniker. And soon he takes over the business, with the Mr. and Mrs. who run it mysteriously disappearing. After that, he starts creating what is now known modern day as the Murder Castle, a immense building that had so many different rooms, as well as in the basement, I believe there's rumored to be 2 furnaces meant to what's the word?
Cremate people, but
yes, that's the bitch.
He didn't know how hot it's needed to cremate people. You cannot build one of those in your home without people questioning it, even back then.
Yeah, as well as acid vats as well to melt it, which were filled with lime. Now, what he would do to keep people from catching on or learning about it is he would rapidly hire and fire contractors as well as construction workers under the guise that they were incompetent. This fit in with his character with the notion that he was above everybody else. He definitely carried himself with an air of arrogance. Would you like to continue this tale?
I think I'll let you go on for now. I'm looking for some visuals to pull up.
Ooh. Right, let's see. Now, he was also married to 2 other women. One was Mitra Belknap and the other Georgia Yoke. His marriage to Clara obviously had fallen apart and she left with a son. They actually do have a surviving family member who there is a show that he has created on the History Channel, and he's currently trying to connect his great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, I don't remember which, to the Jack the Ripper killings. Personally, even after listening to him talking about this, I don't buy it. It's not the same MO. But, I mean, if this was inspiring you, then go ahead. He also was known for several mistresses, including Julia Smith. Julia Smith had come to live at the hotel after she had divorced her previous husband, and she had a daughter named Pearl. Now, after continuing this affair, she found out she became pregnant and came to Holmes, who proposed an abortion. When they went to have this abortion, supposedly, he overdosed her on chloroform and then killed her. One of his other, more famous affairs was one with a Minnie Williams, who was a railroad heiress. Her and her sister moved into the hotel, Annie Williams. He struck up a very quick friendship with Annie. He was a very, very charming, very intelligent man, very attractive to most younger women. And he offered to give her a private tour. When in his office, he asked her to go into the vault, which he then shut, locked her in there, and filled with gas. There are numerous different rooms talked about, including gas chambers, rooms where you would just starve to death, locked in the dark, hanging rooms, just to stumble around in. There was, like I said, in the basement, there were means to dispose of the bodies. It was an incredible maze, including when people were investigating it, they too would get lost in it.
Yeah, I've pulled up a couple maps here, and there's a slice of one of the floors. As you can see, a lot of them are just labeled mysterious closed room, dark room, which doesn't really tell us much.
I mean, it could have been a dark room for his photography hobbies.
I mean,
the dark room was where you would be locked in there, and you'd starve to death in the pitch black. No way to get out, no one to hear you. They say he filled the walls with asbestos to block out the sound of the screams. Now, all while this hotel is running, underneath is the pharmacy. He still has a business running where people are coming in every day to buy things, completely unaware what's happening above or below. Now, mind you, at the same time, the Columbian World's Fair is happening. The Columbian World's Fair was started after Paris had its own, which debuted the Eiffel Tower by, a Mr. Eiffel. Now, America finally got the idea to create one, and there was a lot of debate on where it's going to be held, mainly between New York, DC, and Chicago. DC obviously had the notion that, it was, the capital of the country, which would make sense. New York was the center of trade and culture and most things in America. St. Louis decided it wanted to slice of the pie, but I mean, it had really nothing to offer. No offense to anybody from St. Louis. I mean, I've been there. I love it. My family's from there. A little bit of them. And then Chicago. Chicago was known as the quote-unquote Windy City. They started off as a meat packing industry and a slaughterhouse, but they kept growing and growing and eventually became an epicenter for things like trade and architecture, especially after the Great Chicago Fire. They rebuilt faster than anybody could imagine. And so through a nail-biting, trial of votes, Chicago came out on top. Now the World's Fair was massive. They had a Cairo exhibit, which they shipped in, around 600 Egyptians, I think, to help run it. They had, it was very thin built walls. Like if you had a bad storm, it could have put an end to everything. But it was known for its incredible architecture. It was, it debuted many engineering feats, including Thomas Edison, as well as, Thomas Edison, the amazing Tesla with his, what's the word? I don't know why I'm blanking out words today. I do apologize. Generator, his famous generator, and the, I don't know why I'm forgetting very simple words today. Let's see, what's the name of it? You know the sphere thing that you sit in?
Yeah.
What's the name of that ride?
That you sit in? I do not know what you are talking about.
Oh, what? Do you mean the ones that you sit in and it spins you around, but you can also, like...
The London Eye is this thing.
Oh, a wheel, oh, God, what's it called?
Exactly, it's a very simple word. I don't know how I've... What is it called? So many fanfiction tropes are surrounding this.
Quick Googling.
Quick Googling, what's the word?
Wheel,
Wheel of Fortune.
I'm just getting wheel.
Alright, I'm Googling real quick.
What is it?
What is the London Eye?
Oh, the London Eye. Ferris wheel. Yeah.
Ferris wheel.
Ferris wheel. That's the bitch.
Ferris wheel.
The Ferris wheel. That was also debuted at this. It was known for being an incredibly beautiful area, and it drew in so many people. As much as I believe 8 million had come and visited the fair. That hundreds of thousands every day. So with people coming in, it was also known for being a fairly violent city. During this time in America, deaths were suddenly rising. And nowhere was this more prevalent than in Chicago. In fact, it was normal for people to fall in on the tracks, on the trains. And so it was a completely, normalized thing for a bystander to just reach in and pull the head out of someone who'd fallen down there.
I mean, of course. That's just an everyday occurrence. Yes. So who hasn't done that once or twice?
So while violence is becoming more normalized, it's still like, you wouldn't think about it. You have, what's it called? Trains that would fall off the bridges. Not trains, but, we just called them like tracks or whatever. Where I'm from. What's it called? Cable cars. Cable cars would fall off bridges. Carriages with horses would run off and into the crowd. So, it was very bloody day to day. And the cops were incredibly stretched thin at the time. They had their one little precinct. Well, maybe not one little precinct, but they had their little precinct. And with so many people coming in, there wasn't enough to monitor the fair, let alone everything else that was happening. And thus, this allowed him to take root.
I'm going to read some details about the murder castle. It was completed in 1892, and by 1894, Holmes was in prison, and they were attempting to explore the castle. There were hinge walls, false walls. Some rooms had 5 doors, others none. There were chambers beneath floorboards. Like you said, walls lined with asbestos and iron to keep out the sound. Everything was connected to an alarm system. So anytime anyone stepped in the hall or went downstairs, he would know. There was a room lined with gas fixtures. I just got a pop-up of... Never mind. And there... In his own room, there was a trapdoor in the bathroom that led to a cubicle with a chute that went to the basement for bodies who would then go downstairs for cremation, as Shelby said. I don't know why
Are you dying?
my voice is not cooperating today. Apparently.
Rona.
No.
Are you sure?
Yes. So the 3rd floor had apartments, but the 2nd floor was more of the maze and all of the gas chambers and horrible rooms that he kept in there. And they did find some bones near the murder house. A lot of them were animals, but some of them were human, and some of them were determined they had to have belonged to a child, no more than 6 or 7 years old, because they were so small.
Yes, there is a lot of child murder in this.
Yes.
After he was apprehended, he confessed to many, many killings, including people who were still alive. So it's very hard to tell who he did or did not kill. He was charged for, I believe, let's see, it should say in here, he's believed to have killed between 20 to 250 people. Let's see, he confessed to 27 murders. Again, many were still found alive. Now, this leads on to he also worked with many other people, including he became very close friends with a Benjamin Pitzel, who also had a history of crime. He became almost his right-hand man and helped with disposing of the bodies. Now, Holmes left Chicago in 1893. Well, as a preface, the hotel was finished in 1889. He left in 1893, traveling across America. He was briefly arrested in 1894 in St. Louis, Missouri. Well, I mean, I guess every state wanted a little bit of the Holmes action, if you will. While in prison, he made friends with a train robber named Marion Hedgepeth. I apologize if I butcher any names. What up? I'm Jared. I'm 19. I never fucking learned how to read. Holmes faked his death for insurance money, promising Marion half the cash. However, the insurance companies weren't suspicious, so they planned to fake Pitzel's death instead. Holmes was supposed to find a cadaver to swap Pitzel with, but instead he knocked Pitzel unconscious and burned him alive. Now, mind you, Pitzel's wife and kids also knew Holmes and grew to trust him. They were friends, very close. And so he told the wife of Pitzel that her husband was hiding and somehow convinced her to give him custody of 3 of her children. He had custody of 3 of her children. The eldest daughter and the baby stayed with her. Holmes eventually killed the 2 girls in an airtight trunk, while the boys' remains were found stuffed in a chimney. Mind you, this is a very young boy, probably about, if I remember correctly, around 6 years old. His remains were found in a chimney. Hedgepeth eventually tipped off the police after Holmes did not return, and was obviously very bitter because he was promised money and to be freed. He gave very many contradictory statements from the media and the police, sparking superstition. He claimed that he was the devil incarnate, that the devil was taking over him, and that his own features were starting to change. He was convicted of 9 murders and was sentenced to death by hanging. Now, there's also rumor that he didn't die there either. The current living relative claims that he also left for London and became the famed Jack the Ripper.
And if you look him up, you'll find lots of conspiracies, including the Jack the Ripper one. And for some reason, a lot of accusations that he's related to Meghan Markle. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but you'll find them.
Never heard that one.
I didn't check it out because I didn't think it was really relevant, but you're welcome to if you want to.
This is like a massive thing. Everyone hates Meghan Markle. I don't.
What did Meghan Markle do? I want to know, what did she do?
Okay, so the general British opinion on this is that she's broken tradition and everyone hates her. And they think that she's like manipulating Harry or something. I'm like, no. They just want to go to Canada. Let them. Because like, I wouldn't want to be a royal either, really. I get where she's coming from.
Don't they have to like stop eating when the queen stops? Isn't she like really fucking old? Like, how much does she eat? I'd be so pissed.
No, but she's old, so she takes ages. We love the queen though. Don't diss the queen. You can diss anyone, but don't diss the queen.
Doesn't she have like so many corgis?
Millie's gonna come over and kill you too.
Yeah, don't.
Next
don't
episode, the murder of Shelby.
Good luck finding me. Good luck finding me.
Okay, this back to H.H. Holmes. There's a thing. I like this. It's a really good thing because there's like so many like TV parallels of like fictional characters and stuff. Like this was the first one that came to mind. Like I was just thinking of this as you were talking about it, and I'm not sure why I thought of this. Oh wait, no, I guess I am. I'm reading the one of the pages about him while you're talking, and it says that he would gain like people's trust, and he would like get engaged to them and then murder them after like marrying them and taking all of their like financial stability stuff, like all of their financial stuff. And my first thought was Debbie from the Addams Family Values. Because that's exactly
Debbie,
what she marries Fester to get his money and then tries to kill him. That's exactly what she does. And then the other one was Culverton Smith from BBC Sherlock. Because he is like full-fledged serial killer psychopath. And
he is so creepy.
He's so creepy. I hate him so much, but he's done so well. And he even like his
Is he like the short pudgy one or the rich skinny one?
He's the short pudgy one. The rich skinny one is Charles Magnussen, and we don't.
Yes, Magnussen. Didn't he piss in like
he pisses in the fireplace?
He pissed in the fireplace. Disgusting. Okay,
but Culverton, anyway. Back to Culverton. Just random thing. He this is spoilers. Spoiler tag for you guys who haven't seen the line.
For how many years it's been since this came out?
Of Sherlock. Although, yeah, if you're a Sherlock fan, you'll have seen all of the episodes about 20 times because there's only 13 of them. But his whole thing was that he was basically like a tribute to H.H. Holmes. He killed people he had a hospital that he helped design and create and build, and it has hidden passages in and out of rooms and stuff, so he can go anywhere he wants. He did the same thing H.H. Holmes did, kept firing designers and stuff, and literally his entire thing was a tribute to H.H. Holmes. And he comes into people's rooms, and he chose a hospital because it was like the easiest way. So like these people.
I mean, yeah.
You're not
People
gonna
die. People die. It's a hospital. Surely.
Yeah.
Surely.
And then he met Sherlock, and he stopped killing people. He did the thing as well. So, when he confessed, he just confessed he confessed to every single one of these murders, and
I
he
hate
enjoyed doing it. And it's
people.
with the H.H. Holmes thing, where he originally confessed to 27, and then he changed it later to 130, and then it was assumed to be way more than that.
Yeah, and I hate people too who are like, oh well, I killed this person too, and like Shelby said, you're like, but they're right here, they're alive. What are you, dude? What are you talking? Why? Why would you do that?
My friend George, I killed him. Sometimes I still hear his voice. Stop telling people I'm dead, for fuck's sake.
He's right there.
Literally.
Yes, and so he had a tomb over in Philadelphia, and like Shelby said, some people thought he escaped being hanged. So they exhumed his body. It was, and his tomb was filled with cement, and then covered with cement. Maybe they thought he could claw his way out through, and they wanted to stop it. And they found his mustache, and his was still intact, which was a weird detail. But his body, they found his mustache. His clothes and his mustache were in good condition, but his body was not at all. His body had pretty much completely decayed. So they couldn't find any DNA for testing. So they went with his teeth, and the teeth matched, but the lab did have some bias. So he most likely did not escape being hanged, but there's always a theory.
It was May 7th, 1896 that he was meant to be hanged. The rope did not snap his neck, so he was left to suffocate. The murder castle was torn down in 1938 and has been replaced by a post office. Now, the post office isn't directly on the lot. It's about 4 feet of the murder castle, and it overlap. The murder castle is covered by a parking lot and a lawn.
I wonder how much that land sells for. Because usually when you get
Government,
murders, it lowers the value. But if it's a legendary murder castle, I feel like people would want to buy it just to say that they have that land.
I mean, that's what happened with, I can also bring her up, a famous killer in New Orleans. Well, killer, torturer, disgusting human being. I believe, what was it? Which guy was it who bought it? I think it was Nicolas Cage might have been the one who bought the house, the mansion. I believe it's the LaLaurie mansion in New Orleans.
That sounds like a Nicolas Cage thing to do.
Yeah. He spent a night there until he found out I believe it was Nick Cage. I'm not 100% sure. He spent a night down there, found out everything, went by.
All right, makes sense. Sabine brings up a good point. I think they wanted to stop grave robbers. That makes sense.
Oh yeah, grave robbery was, it was going strong for so many years.
Yeah. So.
I had a point and I can't remember what I was going to say. Shit. I was gonna say.
In summary, child murder. Lots of it. Adult murder. Torture. Don't give custody to a serial killer because they'll kill your kids. And if you have to build a crematorium for someone, don't do it and report them to the police.
He had corrosive pits, lime pits, 2 large furnaces, and a stretching rack.
He had a stretching rack, yeah, and nobody.
One of my favorite things about this, for some random reason, is where did he go to study?
He studied at one college I don't remember the name of. Then he studied at the University of Vermont and the University of Michigan's Medical and Surgical Department.
I don't know why the fact that he went to Michigan amuses me so much, but it's just everyone's gone to Michigan.
Everyone goes to Michigan, yes.
Everyone goes to
When you
Michigan.
die, you all go to Michigan. That's how you get to heaven or hell. You gotta go to Michigan first.
Michigan is purgatory.
Literally the only reason this stream is happening is
You got
because
a sticker.
a bunch of people went to Michigan. And
This is
now
true. In every episode, we must have someone who went to Michigan.
That's the theme for every week. Michigan.
Michigan.
One day
Oh.
we're gonna be like scrolling through. It's just gonna be today on Murder Mondays. Robert Mannion.
No! Wait,
You're-
he didn't even go, did he?
Yeah.
Wait, did he go? Oh, shit.
Firebringer was in
And he's
yeah, Firebringer was not in LA yet. They were still
I don't think he did go to Michigan.
I don't think he did.
here, wait.
Because he was a fan, and then
No, he worked with Firebringer.
Yeah, right, and then
Yeah,
he
worked with Firebringer.
Firebringer
Why did Mannion go to Michigan?
theater.
I'd like to show you all my blood splattered notes. Beautiful.
Let's see. You know, wait, it wasn't even in Michigan. It's in Chicago. Chicago's in Illinois.
Close enough. Michigan is kind of co-opted Chicago. Like, we've kind of claimed it.
It doesn't tell me where he studied, so I don't think he did go to Michigan. So I'm going to retract
think he
my
did.
earlier statement and say tonight on Murder Mondays,
I'm
Joey Richter.
having some lag, and I don't know if it's going to be on the stream, too. But I'm not going to be able to hear you.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was definitely Joey. Joey's the kind of person who would kill a lot of people.
I feel like Lori would be a fun person to talk about on here, especially
Okay.
if I could find it on the cloud. I don't know if I can. I might maybe in some of my old social media accounts. I have photos of her mansion that I took because for anybody who doesn't know, I used to live down in Louisiana. I'm from Slidell. What's it called? Well, I'm not from there, but I live there anyway, which is about like 20 minutes from New Orleans. So you can imagine you get to see all that shit in the French Quarter. Murder. There's so many murder tales in New Orleans.
Lots of
Oh, the axe guy.
yeah,
The
there's...
Jess axe man.
Oh yeah, the New Orleans. Yeah, right. Yeah, there are New Orleans and Massachusetts. All the murder. Massachusetts. The Bridgewater Triangle. I'm telling you. Some people are freaking out in the chat. Yes, Robert was 19 in Twisted. So Star Kid has had 3 teenagers in their shows. Kendall, obviously, Robert, and Joey was 19 for part of the run of AVPM.
Wait, is Joey the youngest? Of like the older
Of the
group?
OGs, yeah.
Really?
He did look like a baby. He looked like a baby.
Yeah, he did look a bit like a baby.
A tall baby.
In a nice
Good baby.
way.
Tall baby.
Tall baby.
On the one chance in a million that Joey ever watches this, we're sorry.
I don't really want to. This was...
Blood.
Yeah,
It's Murder Mondays.
I'm gonna do a bit more research for next week. Yes. Do we have an idea for a main attraction of next week? I have an idea for my personal murder.
We can always like do one where it's like everybody chooses a murder from their area.
Guys, we've been over this. Most of us live in really boring places. Shelby, you live in the most exciting place.
I don't think there's been any murders near my area. Let's see.
Oh, there's murders everywhere.
Oh, there's murders everywhere, but not like good ones.
But what?
It's raining.
You know what I mean.
good murders.
There's not.
I'm not because I'm a guest, so I won't be back. But there's the one. It's not really a creepy thing, but it is.
I think most murders are creepy.
No, because it's not. It's a really recent one. It was manslaughter. It was the one about you guys probably heard about this. It happened like really close to where I live. This kid got run over, and the woman fled back to America claiming diplomatic immunity because her husband was someone in the American government or something like that. I don't know, but that was a big thing. Jesus.
Yeah, no, we don't have any interesting murders where I live. It's all just like standard stuff. We don't have
standard bloodshed.
Okay, you know, am I wrong? Okay, standard. Is it all bad? Yes. Is it all interesting enough to cover? No. For example, we were talking about this a few days ago. The woman who believed that her child was possessed, her 2-year-old child, and put her on a grill and grilled her to death.
I'm sorry.
2-year-old
child. The fuck?
And I was Googling this because I was looking at an article from 2017 and I couldn't find any other information. So I was like, what happened? So while I was Googling it, I found this. I'm like, some of this doesn't seem to line up. So I looked at it. It was a different case. There was another case of a woman who, I don't remember her age, but the daughter was 27. She was disabled and the mom got sick of taking care of her and decided to dismember her and grill her.
Why would you not just leave? Okay, out of the 2 options, leaving is the preferred
those
one.
Those are the only 2 options. Those are the only 2 options. Dismember and grill, or...
Okay, no, but I mean, yes, care home. But, like, imagine, like, if you're a woman who is going to be inclined to dismember your child because you don't want to take care of them, you're not going to think care home before you think just leave them.
That's true. Yes, but also, the 2-year-old, I forgot. Yeah, the mother had fallen into like a depression after the dad left her, and the dad left the kid with her, with the woman who then grilled her alive. Imagine being that dad.
For Halloween, we're dressing up as horror characters.
Oh, hell yes.
Anyway. Oh, you know the musical, or you know the play I'm writing for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blood. Yeah, I already have it planned. Shelby, I believe you're gonna be the killer.
Yes! Again!
Or at least one of them. Again!
Why would you tell us? God damn it.
What? No, it's not gonna be like a mystery thing.
Oh, fair enough. Wait, so is it just gonna be Shelby walks into the room, she stabs Millie, then she leaves?
No! Well, now that has to be a scene, but...
Like, I don't want to die. Please, no.
But that's not going to be the whole thing. No, Millie, you will get to stab some people. You'll get to stab some people, I promise.
When I say again, I don't mean I've killed anybody who's listening. The last show I was in, I played a killer housewife. That seems to be my trope. But what I did was I would murder and eat my son's girlfriends.
I did not remember.
Something about that sounds familiar. I need to look into that.
The new Mrs. Jones.
No, yeah, you said the name.
Play. Yeah.
Oh god, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, you know, I just got really excited about stabbing. That's how I look every time someone puts it in the Discord. But this is the only time anyone's ever gonna see it. Like, Term will just be like, stab, and I'll be like...
If you're still watching, Frog, emote highlight video of Millie getting excited about stabbing.
Why did we need that? There's two instances where I get excited about stabbing.
We need it.
Do we need it?
We do.
We're the three Mary murderesses of the Starkid County Jail.
Yes.
Sure. Yurimov has kindly volunteered to be stabbed.
So, I think I still remember one of my monologues from the show.
Oh dear.
I'll spotlight you.
We're gonna see if I still know it. Let's see. Fuck. Now that I'm on Spotlight, it's oof. It's been a couple months since I did this. Let's see. I was at the Satanist convention a few years ago, and you remember Mr. Johnson, the nice man with the horns? No, that's not the part. Okay. I was at the Satanist convention a few years back, and there's an argument over what the sacrifice should be. Some said it should have been a newborn, but everybody knows that for groups of larger than 13, a virgin is more appropriate. Mr. Johnson, you remember Mr. Johnson, the nice man with the horns? He said that since a newborn is technically a virgin, it would cover both areas. But everybody knows that a virgin shouldn't be sacrificed till she's at least 16. And is there a point to this? A point! Why does there always have to be a point? That's the problem with you kids nowadays. There needs to be motive for murder, a just cause for war, reason for bloodshed. Isn't death and destruction their own reward anymore? And then I got shoved in an oven a couple scenes later.
Yes. That entire ending reminds me of the good ending of Hansel and Gretel, when they just kill the witch and shove her in the oven.
Have you watched Gretel and Hansel?
I want to see it. I want to see it so bad.
Yeah, you should. Murder. That is all I have to say.
Murder.
This has been a hearty 80-minute stream of murder.
It's been 80 minutes?
Yeah. I've got
seriously?
The stream.
Holy shit.
Yes, 81 minutes.
Started streaming 81 minutes ago. And we've gained 2 people since we started.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Well, I think we had 11 to begin with, and then when we started talking about child murder, it dropped down to 9, and then we went back up to 11 now.
People ain't here for the child murder.
We have very different vibes. You have Millie looking like a normal human. You have me like Southern Belle style. I have pearls. I have like the dress that you wear when the cops come to interrogate you about your husband's murder. I have a fan. And then we just have dripping blood and an axe.
Why do I have to be the normal one? I don't have anything weird. Wait, hold on. Oh,
wait, I have another thing I can add to this outfit.
Oh, no. All right, this is the only prop I have, honestly.
The weirdest I can get is an item of my own creation, so... Hey, guys.
I wore
Oh my god.
I wore this to school, by the way.
Oh, that's iconic.
Iconic trio, honestly. Axe murderer. Eyes.
This.
Shelby.
Shelby.
There are no words. Shelby.
That's actually so cool.
I'm not cool. I've deceived all of you.
Anyway, so we do not quite have our guest ready for tomorrow. We do have a list.
For tomorrow?
God damn it. Next week.
Tomorrow is Monday?
Tomorrow is also Monday. It's a never-ending stream of Mondays. Murder Monday every day.
Please, no.
Every day is Murder Monday.
No.
That's our new jingle. Every day is Murder Monday.
You look like if the Grudge and Cousin It had a child, and that child was having a seizure. Just
every day is Murder Monday.
Every day is Murder Monday.
I mean, if you guys really want a stream tomorrow, I'm sure we
Are they
can
asking
grab
for
someone.
it? Because no.
I mean, you don't have to come back. You can come back.
Oh yeah.
Okay, no, wait. Every time we have a guest, they just become a host, and so by the end, we just have like 100 people.
The entire server is
The entire
hosting.
server.
A little part of me wants to permanently instate you.
No, please God, don't. Because I'm
You
gonna
can be a recurring guest.
yeah, because
A recurring character.
if I'm a host, I will fuck up all of the timing constantly.
So did I. I mean, it's our first. We're good. It's our first episode.
I don't know how to shut up.
I don't know when to start talking. So
I'm
we
content to
match.
just sit in silence and listen. I'll just like listen to YouTube and be like, murder.
Can we emote that right there? Take a screenshot. God damn it!
Frog. There's a
thing
lag. Somebody in the chat, send it to me. Wait, Hannibal, please. I don't know. I think Frog might have left us. But I know I have a friend.
Frog was done with our shit.
I just warned everybody, and I don't know why.
You can't ever see it in frame, but I keep tossing this up and I'll catch it, and then I can like spin it out, and it looks cool, but I swear. Shoving this
I have
back,
decapitated my axe.
Shit.
Did you break it or did you?
No, it's supposed to do that, I think.
Oh, good. I think.
I don't know. It was a $5 axe, but it was pretty. Actually, I have a story. I was dressing up as Lizzie Borden for Halloween. And so there were two different types of axes. And I was there with a friend. I'm like, I don't know which one I like better. She's like, here. She got in position. She was like, chop my head off. And she had me pretend to chop her head off with two different axes. And I was like, okay, I want this one. She's like, there you go.
Oh,
If it weren't for the fact that there are only 4 characters, a little part of me wants us to do Lizzie the musical so bad.
Oh.
The songs are so good.
What's stopping us?
Well,
here, you know what we should do? We have a bunch of cast members, right?
yeah.
And there are a bunch of musicals with a few cast members. Let's just do them all at once.
Oh my god, yes. We're each assigned to a different musical.
Let's just do them.
Wait, no,
all
it's just like a solid week of different shows.
Oh
yes.
my god, yeah.
Monday is Lizzie. Tuesday is Trail to Oregon, because Tuesday Trail to Oregon. Wednesday, Solve It Squad. Thursday, 6. Friday.
I don't know who I'd want to be in 6, man, but it's so oof.
Friday,
I get so many feelings.
I'm out of musicals with a small cast list. Somebody help me.
Well, what kind of vibe do you want from the musicals?
All the vibes.
Small.
Oof, now you've got me confused.
Rosino. I think you mean Rosie, yes, Inara.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you, Hannibal. Oh yeah, Frog is still here.
Oh, hell yeah. Let's see, what's a musical I like? Bat Boy would be so fun. Bat Boy would be so chaotic. Let's see, I'm pulling up my YouTube so I can look in my like saved playlist of musicals.
The chat is scolding me for murdering. How dare they?
Lizzie is such a fun show. If you haven't heard it, you can listen to it on YouTube. It's a very, very small group. It's only 4 actresses. It was supposed to go to West End, but I'm assuming because of Corona, I'm not sure, that ended up getting pushed back indefinitely. It's like, when I say it's a very small show, it's like 70 views, kind of small, but it's so good. It has like, it's all sorts of different rock styles between like classic to like Journey. Like, it's great and so difficult to sing. Like, the main reason I've been practicing so much lately is I want to get good enough so I can sing Lizzie, because she belts in F5.
Oh,
I don't know what that means. Okay.
Here, let's see.
We have some suggestions in the chat. Ooh. 35mm is 5 people, and Hades Town is that.
Yes.
The
Ballad of Sarah Berry.
That face means yes. Are both people in the basement dead? No, Millie is still alive, and she's in my basement. Remember?
Am I?
Let's see. American Psycho would be a very weird vibe.
American Psycho would be great though. I'm looking on Tick Tick Boom has 3 people in it. I didn't know it only had 3 cast members.
I feel like there's just a little bit of worry with Tick Tick Boom considering topics.
I know it's hella high. I'm not dumb. I just don't know how high.
Let's see.
If Shelby can't sing it, it's hella high.
That's a lie. But you know when Kim's singing that like really high notes in Take Me Back, the Never Let You Go part? That's in a 5. Full on belting that. Let's see if I can get I'll hold it up to the mic so I can just like play that one little part. 13 Days. This is my favorite song in the soundtrack too, which is why it torments me. 13 Days and Taunting. Oh, I have it on full volumes.
I feel like the ultimate goal.
For prussic acid. My stomach. And she said, Mrs. Gordon even told the doctor that
Here, we're gonna.
a calico dress. It was a
Here.
cheap cotton Bedford coat.
An American cloth.
All cotton.
The trial.
I think one part of it was black or very
Light blue. With a small dark figure. A sprig. I did not suggest to Mrs. Gordon that she change her dress.
I think she did.
Okay.
I saw no blood on that dress. Not
A drop.
Just drop the dress. The subject's getting young. Gonna buy myself a new dress. Gonna buy a whole damn private home. 'Cause I got money. Girl, I just got paid. 4 more days in Taunton. Then I'll fly away.
That doesn't even sound like the really high part. Jeez.
I don't know.
To the courthouse, the verdict's coming in. It only took an hour for those repairs to come in.
Alrighty then. It's what? It's 4 p.m. In
9
3
p.m.
hours.
In 3 hours, something.
In 3 hours, we are watching that, and then performing it.
No, we're not performing.
I
that.
gotta clean up all the blood on my face and my notes and everything else.
We've been going for about 90 minutes now. Should we kill this episode?
I think so. This was a bit of a mess.
This will get more.
It will get better. There will be more murder. Promise.
There will be more murder.
If you would like to know who our next guest is, or the time may change since our guests are always in different time zones. Shelby and I are in the same time zone though.
Woo.
Yes.
America!
Yeah, woo!
Yeah.
Then we shall. Then follow us on Instagram. We're Constellation Children.
Constellation Children, no underscore.
And if you would like to follow us individually, I'm Blue Rose 33. There might be a 0 in there. I don't know.
There is a
I
zero.
post shitty, depressing poems.
I occasionally post photography. I guess I'm shell.by, aka by underscore the underscore C, because I'm a sucker for a good pun, so why not?
I'm a basic star kid bitch, so my username is it's.snarl.motherfuckers because it's snarl motherfuckers.
On that note, goodbye, motherfuckers.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
See you next week for some more murder and lots more trigger warnings.